man is back.
Oh, okay, Jay, boys. Oh my gosh, the man got that stuff. This is a 5 out of freaking 5.
It is beat making time.
Next week is E3 week. My album comes out next week.
I have the leopard.
This is your boy.
All right, ladies and gentlemen of the YouTube citizens, y'all know who this is. This is your boy, Dash the True Inferno. Back at it with another Call of Duty Black Ops 6 commentary video gameplay for you guys, and the LeBron Chronicles continues here. I got another video talking about LeBron James, but it's not based off of anything that LeBron did. It's not based off of anything that Bronny did as of late, both of these as of late. And to a degree, it's not even what Stephen A did as of late. It's just the fact that former and current NBA players are talking about this situation now. So now it's like, okay, let's see what they say. Let's see what they say about this situation, shall we? Okay, so check this out. This is some crazy stuff right here. So we're going to be referencing two podcasts. The second one we're going to reference is the 7 p.m. in Brooklyn with Carmelo Anthony. So on that episode, it was Melo, it was D-Wade, and I don't know who the host is. I don't know who this guy is, but big ups to him because he tells it like it is. He set the stage. He, referencing pretty much everything that is needed to be referenced within this podcast. So I don't know who this guy is, but kudos to him. And it's on YouTube. Like this segment right here regarding the LeBron James confronting Stephen A. Smith fiasco. It's on YouTube. So you can easily look this up. How long is this? It's about like 10 minutes and 41 seconds long. You can easily look this up on YouTube. So yeah, it's not hard to find. It's really not hard to find. All right. Now, the other podcast, and this is the one we're going to reference first, because this is the one I have the most issues with, is the Draymond Green show with Baron Davis. So it's just the two of them talking about this situation. So let's get on with it, shall we? Okay, so right off the bat, at the beginning of the Draymond Green show, Draymond starts off by saying, to call something that they did was bullshit and weak. Where we grew up, you get hands put on you. And I'm like, okay, so he started off by saying that, right? And I'm like, okay, so hold on. Let me get this straight. If you were, and you know what? And there's a funny story that happened recently. So I'm going to reference that. It's not basketball related, but it somewhat ties in to the difference between talking about somebody's actions and talking about their character based on them doing the same thing over and over and over again. So in this case, Draymond started off by saying, let me repeat this quote. To call somebody that they did was bullshit and weak. Where we grew up, you get hands put on you. So he talking about Stephen A. appearing on the Gills Arena podcast. And at the beginning of that joint, he, let me read the quote here. Somebody asked him, I don't know who it was, somebody asked him, what you make of LeBron confronting you and what you make of that situation. And Stephen A. on that podcast said, and this is also on YouTube, he said, I thought it was weak. And the key word here is it. I thought it was weak. I thought it was some bullshit. But in the moment, I knew that I was listening to a father. Notice how Draymond nor Baron Davis did not mention that part. They just talk about the fact that Stephen A. said it was weak and it was some bullshit. Okay, so keep that in mind. And then here's where Draymond switched it up, right, and try to control the narrative similar to LeBron. And this was like, again, when Draymond said that to call somebody that they did was bullshit and weak. When we grew up, you get your hands put on. Let me talk about that quote real quick, because I'm starting to get all over the place like they were, because they contagious now. But I'm like, you're going to get bent out of shape because that one thing that they did. It's one thing if they have a history of doing that, but if you're going to get bent out of shape because they did it once, and I'm not saying did Stephen A. do that once, I don't know, but let's assume that this was the only time Stephen A. did something like this, right? You're going to get that bent out of shape? Yeah. I'm going to have to look at you and where you grew up and basically be like, yo, y'all sensitive as hell. Y'all sensitive as hell. I have another word in mind, but I'm not going to say it. But I'm going to have to look at you, as in Draymond, and where he grew up and say, y'all sensitive as hell if y'all got bent out of shape over one comment that somebody made and they, in that one time. It's one thing if they would have made that comment over and over and over again and potentially talk about different people or talk about the same person, then I'll be like, okay, you have a point there. Because now it's a characteristic, it's a pattern. But the fact that Stephen A refers to something that somebody else did that one time as weak and bullshit, one time, you have a problem with that? Yeah, you kind of sensitive as heck. But here's where Draymond wants to switch it up. He went from Stephen A saying it was weak and it was bullshit to basically say he called another man weak. And I'm like, wait. Stephen A never called LeBron weak. There's a difference between calling the actions of somebody weak and calling them weak. It's similar to calling somebody a dirty player because they have a history of doing that. But at the same time, you want to say, oh, that person is not a dirty player, but at that moment, they made a dirty play. There's a difference between the two. To say, oh, you did a dirty play, but you're not a dirty player, and then from you're a dirty player. If you're calling somebody a dirty player, that means they have a history of doing dirty plays over and over and over and over and over again. As opposed to, oh, you only did this one time, that was a dirty play. You're not a dirty player, but that was a dirty play. So, and Draymond should know this. I mean, people accuse him of being a dirty player. So, I mean, come on now. Now, is that me? No. But people have accused him of being a dirty player. So, there you go with that. So, for him to switch it up to say that Stephen A called LeBron's action or LeBron confronting Stephen A weak and bullshit, as opposed to falsely accusing, I might add, Stephen A of calling LeBron weak. I'm like, no. First of all, you're lying. Stephen A didn't call LeBron weak. He said his action that one time was weak and it was bullshit. So I'm like, get your facts straight. So there's that. Now, and then he gonna say, keep it basketball, and to call a man weak is a basketball. Again, Stephen A never called LeBron James weak. Again, get your facts straight. And then, he continued on to say he took shots, Stephen A took shots at LeBron as a father. And I'm like, oh, okay. What did he say, though? And we'll get to what he said in a minute. And then Baron Davis jumps in. So Baron Davis, again, controlling the narrative, he would say, yeah. And he said in the quote here, cross that line, or he accused Stephen A of crossing the line when he talked about someone's kids. And then he gonna add on, say, if it was my kids, I'm gonna catch you too. And I'm like, well, wait a minute now. There's a lot wrong with that statement here. Because what Baron Davis isn't talking about here is what did Stephen A say about Bronny? What did he say about Bronny? What did Stephen A say about Bronny? None of them did. Like, Baron Davis didn't do it. Sure as hell, Draymond didn't do it. So the question here is, what did Stephen A say exactly about Bronny James? Now, again, if you didn't see my last video where I talked about this, what Stephen A said was, Bronny, and I'm just summarizing, Bronny James is not ready. He's not ready. He shouldn't be playing in the NBA right now because he's not ready. He should be in the G League, developing his game until he is ready, and he can take over the league from that point going forward. And he hoping that Bronny does succeed in the NBA. That's what Stephen A said about Bronny. So how is that disrespecting Bronny? Especially since as a late second round pick, which is what Bronny is, he's the 55th, so that's a late second round pick. You know what happens to late second round picks? They go to the G League. They play there, develop their game, and then they enter the league. That's what Stephen A was saying should happen with Bronny. Now, at the same time, and Stephen A even said opening night, LeBron should have had that moment with Bronny. And kudos to them. Yeah, they earned that. But after that, G League. That's what Stephen A said. And was there anything disrespectful about that? No. Because another thing Stephen A did was he read off Bronny numbers. And again, and at the time when he did this is January the 29th. I want to remind people, when Stephen A said this stuff about Bronny James, this was January the 29th, which was, again, not mentioned on Draymond's show by either Draymond nor Baron Davis, by the way. This was on January the 29th when he read off Bronny's numbers. Now, I got Bronny's numbers from right now, as me recording this video. He's still averaging 1.7 points per game, 0.5 rebounds, and 0.4 assists in 20 minutes of action. And he averaging, I believe it's like 4.7 minutes per game. I have to look real quick. But yeah, it's 4.7 minutes per game. And I'm like, okay, that's not good. Now, it's one thing to say, well, he was being put in during garbage time. Fair enough, if that was the case. But there's clips of him being put in the second quarter. I'm like, why is Bronny James being put into the game in the second quarter where he clearly not ready? Like, he is being torched out there. Like, why? Why is he being put out there? That makes no sense. Like, no, that's not good. That is bad. So, and basically, that's the whole point. Like, Stephen A said, like, yo, Bronny should be in the G League, develop there. Once he's ready, bring him into the league, and then there's no problems, you know? But they didn't talk about what Stephen A said. They just said, oh, he talking about Bronny James. I'm like, well, what did he say? They didn't say what he said, which is a problem. Why? Because they try to control the narrative just like LeBron did. Okay, let's move on. Back to Draymond. He accuses Stephen A. Smith of calling out LeBron as a father for having his son play in the league. And I'm like, well, did you see him play? Like, have you seen Bronny play in the second quarter of meaningful games? Like, yeah. I mean, that's not good. Like, that's bad. So, yeah, there's that. And then he go on to have issues, to say, rather, that he having issues about people talking about him since he's the 55th pick. Like, and he was like, yo, why people talking about Bronny James when he's the 55th pick? And then he talked about there's only two people that people remember that are the 55th pick. And they are Manu Ginobili and Isaiah Thomas. Everybody else is like, nobody remembers the 55th pick. So why they talk about Bronny James? And I'm like, y'all can't be serious, right? Y'all know who we talking about, right? And this is a theme that exists throughout this entire segment on this show. And I'll get to that in a second. I don't want to repeat myself. But by saying that, they are disrespecting LeBron James. Inadvertently, but I don't know, well, yeah, I'm going to say inadvertently because Draymond is friends with LeBron. So inadvertently, they are disrespecting LeBron James. I'll explain why later on in this video. But let's move on. So then, he says that, you know, Draymond said that LeBron tweeted that Bronny was in high school, while in high school, that LeBron put out a tweet saying that Bronny was better than half the players in the league at that time was an excuse. So, you know, Stephen A referenced that, yo, LeBron put Bronny on this pedestal by, one, putting out that tweet that's saying that, oh, Bronny is better than half these guys in the league right now. And this was when Bronny was in high school. Yeah. You are, yeah. And then he said that's an excuse. I'm like, obviously Draymond should not be in the media because he don't know how the media works. And I'll address the stature of LeBron James later on in this video. Because again, they are disrespecting LeBron James by saying that in terms of, oh, that tweet that LeBron put out is an excuse. Or, Draymond said that anyway. And then he said parents supposed to uplift their own kids. Again, inadvertently disrespecting LeBron James. And then here's where Draymond lied. He did go back to the whole, Stephen A saying, LeBron confronting him was weak and all that stuff. He said, and I quote, saying that this week on TV. I'm like, Stephen A wasn't on TV when he said that. He was on a podcast, which is on YouTube. That's not TV. Like, what are you talking about? Now you're lying again. Like, what are you talking about here? And then Draymond goes on to say, Stephen A should have reached out and talked to him after the confrontation happened, but he didn't. And he said that week. I'm like, y'all, like, they did not do any type of fact checking or anything like that at all. Like, again, they just basically talking out of their asses, especially Draymond. Because I'm like, if you would have saw what Stephen A said happened when the confrontation take place, because obviously LeBron ain't speaking up about what happened. So you have to rely on Stephen A. But he purposely left this out. Because why? Because Draymond wants to control the narrative and wants to make Stephen A look bad. So what happened? Stephen A said LeBron came over to him and got on him about his son, about Stephen A talking about his son. And again, I talked about what Stephen A said about his son. And again, this was on January the 29th. And Stephen A was like, yo, what are you talking about? And he's like, no, I don't want to hear that, bro. And I'm like, well, let's talk about it after the... This is Stephen A said, yo, we can talk about it after the game. We can talk about it after the game. We can call each other after the game or the next day. Something like that. He said, nah, screw that. So basically, Stephen A did try to talk to him after the game. He tried to talk to him like, yo, let's just talk about it at the game. But LeBron wasn't having it. So right off the bat, Draymond doesn't have his facts checked and is basically talking out of his ass and basically trying to control the narrative to make Stephen A look bad. Let's move on. Baron Davis. Again, he didn't do his fact checking as well because he went on to say, and I quote, it's Bronny's dream to make the team, not LeBron's dream. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what Bronny's dream is. And if now that I think about it, I don't recall maybe like a press conference with LeBron right there, but I don't recall Bronny James stepping out and talking to the media on his own about anything regarding his career, regarding his time with the Lakers. I don't know. I haven't seen anything. So I'm just assuming that either he never done it or it's not that important based on what he said. But here's the thing. So I don't know what Bronny's dream is. I'm not going to question what Baron Davis says about Bronny's dream because I don't know what his dream is. But to say that it's not LeBron's dream, again, Baron Davis, same as Draymond, did not do his fact checking. You can literally Google, and I did this. You can literally Google search this. I'm about to read word for word what I Google search. LeBron wants to play with Bronny. AI overview. LeBron James has expressed a strong desire to play in the NBA with his son Bronny and has even stated he would do, quote, whatever it takes, end quote, to make that happen. So this was posted on a Sports Illustrated issue on January the 7th of 2023. And if you were to click on that, which is the very first link that I saw when I put that in there, you know what the first thing they did in that article? Here's what they said in that first paragraph. LeBron James absolutely wants to play with his eldest son, Bronny, in the pros. During an interview with ESPN with a link to the article with a video interview that LeBron did with ESPN, continue on with the quote, he acknowledged that they might not be able to do so on the same team. So if you click on the link, there's the interview right there, word for word, and there's a video of this. So let's go back to that Google search. Let's scroll down a little bit. Okay, the third link. LeBron James doubled down on desire to play alongside, and he got to click on it to read the rest of the title, alongside sons, as in more than one, in the NBA with new commercial. This was posted on October the 23rd, 2023. So there was a, I believe, Beats by Dre commercial talking about this. So, yeah. Doubling down on his dream. And then we can scroll down a little bit further. Oh, look, there's an NBC Sports article. May the 1st, 2024. For LeBron, playing with Bronny reportedly not the same, and I got to click on it to read the title, rest of the title, not the same level of priority it once was. But he still wants to do it, though. He still wants to do it. So, and then there's all these articles about LeBron wanting to play with Bronny. So for, again, Baron Davis to say, where's the quote? To say, it's Bronny's dream to make the team, not LeBron's dream. I'm like, you don't belong in the media either. Because again, just like Draymond, you're talking out of your ass and you didn't do your research. This is not hard to do. This ain't rocket science. I was able to figure out that, this was LeBron's dream. Now, again, I don't know if it was Bronny's dream or not. I don't know. I'm not going to question that. But to say it's not LeBron's dream, I'm like, yes, it is. You can just Google search that. Yes, it is. What are you talking about? Now, he did say there's other rookies that were drafted in that same draft class that should be talked about instead of Bronny. And wow, that based on their abilities on the court, That is true. I'm not going to dispute that in terms of all their abilities on the NBA court. That is true. But the problem with that quote is, again, they are disrespecting LeBron James and do not know how the media works, which is why they should not be in the media. Now, let's move on. And then he go on to reference, oh, he be talking about my kids again. Like, yeah, we already covered that. We ain't gonna get into that. And then he went on to say, it's been on his mind. It's been on his heart. You hurt that dude. Referring to LeBron, like, oh, it's been in LeBron's mind. It's been in his heart. And then he accused Stephen A. of hurting him. When, you know. And then, which brings me back to the whole January 29th thing. So, and again, I'll explain the irony behind those comments and why that's all cap later on in this video. We're really shortly, because I'm almost done quoting everything I want to quote for that podcast. And then Draymond comes back and say, how the game is covered is how the game is viewed. And then I'm going to say that quote for last real quick. Let me address LeBron James' status and why the likes of Baron Davis and Draymond Green are inadvertently disrespecting LeBron James. Because here's what they're doing. They are treating LeBron as if he's a normal parent. And in other cases, they are treating LeBron as if he's like a Kenyon Martin or a Tim Hardaway Sr. or a Glenn Robinson, the second? Or a Scottie Pippen. Basically, former NBA players who have sons that are in the league or that are coming to the league. You know, Carmelo Anthony is another example. And I'm like, that's disrespectful because LeBron James is the second greatest basketball player of all time, for one. And for two, LeBron James is the #1 global ambassador from the NBA. Like, there's nobody who is close to him on that level in terms of popularity, in terms of acknowledgement, in terms of recognition. The only other player that is close to that is Steph Curry. Those two are the only ones that have that global appeal. Every other player in the NBA does not have that. I don't care who you name. Kevin Durant, Jokic, Embiid, Paul George, Cade Cunningham, Russell Westbrook, Shea. I said Joker already. Ja Morant, Anthony Edwards. I don't care who else you play in the NBA that is at a superstar level. The NBA community knows who they are. Yeah, duh, they should know. But outside of the NBA community, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, acting, whether it's TV or movies, cooking, religion, whatever the case may be, any other community in the world outside of basketball, if you were to ask them who is LeBron James, they would tell you who LeBron James is. If you were to ask them who Steph Curry is, more than likely they would tell you who Steph Curry is. But if you were to ask them, yo, do you know who Kevin Durant is? They'd be like, no. Most of them would be like, no. I'm not saying every single one of them would say that, but I can guarantee you that most of them would say no. If you ask them who Anthony Edwards is, most of them would say no. If you were to ask them, yo, who is the Joker? They would probably think the character from Batman. Like, no, there's a real life Joker. They'd be like, yo, what? And then thinking about the character from Batman, not realizing they're talking about a basketball player. The bottom line is this. LeBron James' stature is so high. Talk about it's been in his heart this whole time. If he was really bothered, and I already talked about this in a previous video, in terms of it was never about Bronny James. It was about what Stephen A. said about LeBron. So it was never about Bronny. He used Bronny as an excuse to get at Stephen A. So, but again, if LeBron was really that bothered, which Paul got Stephen A.'s number, Maverick got Stephen A.'s number, and LeBron, those are LeBron's boys. He could easily hit one of them up, be like, yo, call Stephen A., tell him I want to meet up with him the very next day, or 2 days from now, or 3 days from now, whatever the case may be. They would easily call up LeBron and say, yo, LeBron want to meet up with you on this day, within this week, or whatever. And Stephen A. is going out there. This was already established. Like Stephen A. said, yo, if he got a call to meet up with LeBron, he's going. And which Paul would be like, yo, yeah, Stephen A. will show up. Like, Stephen A. will be there in a heartbeat, like, without question. Which Paul confirmed that? Well, according to Stephen A., which Paul will confirm that? So, to say, oh, it's been in his heart and social, I'm like, bro, he could have easily confronted Stephen A. about it. But no, he didn't. He waited until March the 6th. Instead of confronting it within the days or within that week of January the 29th, he waited over the month to confront Stephen A. Why? Because Stephen A. had that contract renewal with ESPN, which was on the same day the confrontation happened, by the way, which was not mentioned on this podcast, but was mentioned in another podcast. And he controlled the narrative to take Stephen A.'s high moment and to shit on him on that same day to make it look bad. Because that's what LeBron wanted to do. He wanted to control the narrative to make Stephen A. look bad. I said that in the last video. I'm saying that here. And basically, Draymond and Baron Davis joined in on that bandwagon and wanted to make Stephen A. look bad. Now, let's talk about Draymond's comment. How the game is covered is how the game is viewed. Obviously, well, I don't want to say, oh, he haven't been an All-Star. I don't know. I don't remember his All-Star status in terms of him playing an All-Star game. Like, have you not seen the All-Star game in the past, decade? Like, bruh, like, do you not know the concept of load management? Like, bruh, we got superstars and all-stars basically not showing up to play. They just show up in street clothes, and yet people are still paying a crap ton of money to see these games, but they want to see these players play, and they won't know until the day of. And LeBron James is the latest example. This fool pulled up to All-Star Sunday and said he can't play. And I'm like, why didn't he say that sooner? Because then they could have got another guy to take his place. But nope. He don't care about that. He don't care about that. So it's like, what the heck? So, no, it's not how the game is covered. It's how the game is viewed. It's what we see on the court. Or what we don't see on the court is how the game is viewed. And because of that, it's how the game is covered because of the players. To a degree. You could also look at the coaching staff. You could look at front management and say, oh, we don't need him to play that day. Even though some of the players may want to play, but the front office or the coach staff is like, no, you can't play. We need you rested, blah, blah, blah. Greg Popovich, for example. So, yeah, that is what hurt in the game. Load management, people paying a bunch of money just for superstars to not play. That's wasted money. Like, and of course, Draymond not going to mention that. Like, he gave his analysis on All-Star Weekend in terms of the fact that it was terrible, but he won't give he never gave a reason why it was terrible. And I'm like, you don't belong in media, man. You need to say how you feel and why you feel that way. And then we can look at you and agree or disagree. But this dude just said, oh, All-Star Weekend was terrible. And I'm like, okay, why was it terrible? Whether he was right or wrong, at that moment in time, is irrelevant. I wanted to hear why he thought it was terrible. Nope, he never gave it. So, bottom line is this. The likes of Draymond Green, Baron Davis do not belong in media because either they don't do their research and they're going to be talking straight out their asses, or they're trying to control the narrative to make somebody look bad. So, there you go with that. Now, let's talk about people who do belong in media. So, we're going to get to the other podcast, the one that have Carmelo Anthony featuring D-Ray. And I don't know who this one guy is, but kudos to him because he was like covering a lot of stuff. He talked about something, yeah, LeBron confronted Stephen A. on the day when Stephen A. renewed his contract with ESPN. You know, he brought up other stuff that wasn't brought up on the Draymond Green show. So, now Ray did say, as a father, I'll come over to you too. And again, I have to be like, well, as a father, LeBron should have confronted Stephen A. sooner than that, instead of waiting over a month to do it. So, that's my issue with that. But again, he didn't do that because LeBron tried to control the narrative. It was never about, and this was even said on the show, on the Carmelo show. It was never about Bronny. It was about LeBron. But yet, LeBron used Bronny as a way to control the narrative to make Stephen A. look bad. So, because again, when LeBron confronted Stephen A., lip readers was like, yo, keep my son's name out of this shit, bro. So, yeah, that's a problem. That's a problem. Now, Ray also was going to say LeBron would not confront anyone who badmouths him, but he confronts Stephen A. That's some kind of respect towards Stephen A. And that's actually one good way of looking at it. Because let's be honest, both Stephen A. and Skip Bayless would say that Jordan is the greatest basketball player of all time. I'm on that boat too. The difference between the two is Skip Bayless would trash LeBron any chance he gets. Stephen A. wouldn't do that. Stephen A. would stick up for LeBron. So the question is, why isn't LeBron going after Skip Bayless? Why isn't LeBron going after anybody else who were harshly, by the way, badmouth LeBron, who will harshly critique LeBron? But yet he going after Stephen A? So yeah, that's a good point because yes, Stephen A. is the biggest sports analyst, the sports like character, I guess, in the world, and of course he's a black guy. So yeah, that is a good point that Ray made. Now he also said this was what Dwyane Wade said. Bron is my guy, and I'm quoting him here. Bron is my guy, but he did put some extra heat on Bronny. And there it is. That's what was Stephen A. referencing. That right there is what was Stephen A. referencing. Because again, and this is where the lack of respect comes from with Draymond and Baron Davis. Again, we ain't just talking about a regular old superstar whose son is playing in the game. We ain't talking about any old legend whose son playing in the game. We are talking about one of the top 3 greatest basketball players of all time. And because of that status, if your son try to play in the league like you, there's going to be extra pressure on that son because of who his father is. Whether it's justified or not, whether we want that to be the case or not, that is going to be the case because of who LeBron James is. And Draymond and Baron will not recognize him as such, which is why I'm like, bro, you can't treat LeBron as if he's just a regular old parent. No, do you not know who we talking about here? So yeah, and then the fact that Bronny is the son of, in my opinion, the second greatest basketball player of all time, on top of LeBron saying, yo, Bronny is better than half the guys in the league, and I want to play a year with my son, with Bronny, stuff like that. Yeah, that's adding more stuff onto this fire that Bronny is going to have to deal with. And it's like, no, we don't want that for Bronny. We don't want that for Bronny. So, yes, the fact that D-Wade said that, and again, D-Wade is one of LeBron's boys. Yeah. Thank you, D-Wade. Thank you, D-Wade. Now, Melo said, and then let's check this out. This is a quote. This has been building up for 20 plus years. This ain't got nothing to do with Bronny. What'd I say? What I said in the last video. This whole time, it had nothing to do with Bronny. It was about what Stephen A. said about LeBron. And Melo went beyond that. He said this has been building up for over 20 plus years. And then he continued on to say, no matter what you say, my son is the trigger. So, which is true. Which is true. So, the bottom line is this. The Carmelo podcast, they kept it real. They obviously did their homework and they checked their facts before they start speaking on any of this. And both of them are LeBron's boys. And again, I don't know who that third guy is, but kudos to him too. Because he brought up some facts, from Stephen, basically, from Stephen A's perspective, saying that about the contract. And then, saying, oh, wait a minute. So it wasn't about Bronny. It was about LeBron this whole time. Yeah. Draymond didn't do that. Baron Davis didn't do that, right? Because they wanted to control the narrative to make Stephen A look bad, or they just completely suck when it comes to being a part of the media. But nevertheless, what Ray and Melo said more or less confirms what I said about this situation a week ago, in my last video, rather. And that is this. LeBron used Bronny James to make Stephen A look bad. And LeBron, by doing so, controlled the narrative, again, to make Stephen A look bad. So, what I said last week about, in terms of the worst part of the year, that honor goes to LeBron James, it's sticking. It's sticking. And before I sign off, there's one thing I do want to add to this whole situation. That is this. Bronny James isn't a kid, by the way. He's grown. He's 19. So, unless something changed over the past few years, because I don't know. But last time I checked, and again, I could be wrong on this, but last time I checked, you can get drafted to the Army, Navy, military, all that stuff when you turn 18. That's not a kid. If you're getting drafted to go fight somewhere, you're not a kid. You're a grown person, man. You're grown. So in the case of Bronny, I don't care what area in the world you're in. I don't care if you're going to college. When you turn 18, you're grown. Like, I don't refer to you as a grown-up until you turn 21, but as an 18-year-old, you're grown. You ain't no damn kid. So in the case of Bronny, the reason why I mention that is because if somebody were to try to talk Bronny, LeBron, I know LeBron is his father, but at the same time, your son is a grown. He's grown now. So he got to fight his own battles. He shouldn't have to rely on daddy to do it for him. So yeah, Bronny, if somebody ever was talking badly about Bronny, which was not the case here, by the way, but if somebody was to do that, he should be able to fight his own battles and say, man, screw that, whatever. Or he can speak up and say, no, I have a problem with that dude. He talking out his, whatever. Let Bronny handle it. LeBron shouldn't have to step in and handle it. Not for a 19-year-old. Because, again, he's grown. He got to be his own man. So, there you go with that. And I'm going to call it a wrap now. So, with all that said, y'all know who this is. This is your boy, New Jake Aspie, a.k.a. New Stephen A. Smith, saying peace out, y'all, and I'll see y'all next time. Yeah.